What the f? After years and years of waiting, we can finally get mogged by Arlecchino. Okay, seriously, Arlecchino might be the best DPS in the game, and in this video, I'll show you her damage potential, her best teams, and how you should build her. Oh yeah, you can also just hold charge attack and fucking fly. Like, what is this, dude? So let's start out with Arlecchino's normal attacks, which are actually pretty unique. Most characters in the game have like a 4 or 5 hitting combo. Arlecchino has 6. Arlecchino's whole kit revolves around her normal attacks and specifically the Mask of the Red Death. And so when she enters the state, her normal attacks, charged, and plunging attacks all get converted into pyro damage that cannot be overridden. Not only that, but her normal attacks will deal more damage while she's in this state. Every single normal attack will consume 7.5% of whatever bond of life that you have, and it can be consumed this way every 0.03 seconds. And when her bond of life is consumed in this manner, her elemental skill's cooldown will decrease by 0.8 seconds. So the way to enter this state is to have a bond of life greater than or equal to 30% of her max HP. A bond of life is indicated on your health bar. You'll see a little red outline on your health bar, and the further it goes left, it means the more bond of life that you have. So in this clip, I only have a little bit of bond of life, and then in this clip, I have a lot of bond of life. And the way to get a bond of life is to use your elemental skill, which will apply a blood debt directive onto the enemy. Now, there's a lot of different names for some of these things, so the blood debt directive is pretty much the big red X on the enemy, and once you have this applied, using a charge attack will absorb this blood debt directive and grant her a bond of life that's worth 65% of her max HP. So if 2 enemies are marked with a blood debt directive and you charge attack them, you'll gain a bond of life worth 130% of her max HP. The maximum value of a bond of life that Arlecchino can be granted within 35 seconds after using her skill is 145% of her max HP. If she tries to obtain more, the timer is going to reset along with that bond of life value. I should mention that thanks to one of Arlecchino's passive talents, if you leave a blood debt directive onto an enemy for 5 seconds, the big red X thing, it'll get upgraded into a blood debt dew, which is just a bigger and flashier red X. And when you use a charge attack to absorb it, it grants Arlecchino a bond of life worth 130%. So if you're doing content that only has one enemy, you can use Arlecchino's skill first, switch to all your other party members and cast their skills and ults, then switch back to Arlecchino and charge attack to gain the 130% bond of life. Also, any enemy that has a blood debt of any kind on them and is defeated, Arlecchino gets a bond of life worth 130%. So if you applied your skill onto someone and they died before you could even charge attack and get your bond of life, you don't really have to worry about wasting that skill because you'll get the bond of life regardless. Moving on to Arlecchino's burst. Upon casting it, she absorbs and clears any blood debts while dealing AoE pyro damage, and then fully clearing her elemental skill cooldown and healing herself based off of her attack and her bond of life percentage. That was a lot of words, I know, but pretty much her burst is used to heal herself. If you have bond of life, it'll heal more. If you don't, it'll still heal you based off of her attack, but you won't get as much healing. You also use the elemental burst for damage, of course, and it fully resets your elemental skill cooldown, which is a 30-second cooldown. Now, you can reduce this by doing normal attacks when you're in the Mask of the Red Death state by 0.8 seconds. We already talked about that, but also if you just want to fully clear your elemental skill cooldown, you could just use your burst. Now, there could be different cases of when to use your burst. For example, if you're fighting the PMA boss, if you use your skill to get her bond of life and you kill those little enemies when he breaks off, and now you have to move on to the bigger enemy with not much bond of life left, you can just burst and then recast your skill to gain more bond of life. Another case of using her burst is after you finish your full normal attack strings and you're getting close to running out of bond of life. Usually by this time you'll have your skill back so you can cast it and then burst so you can get some extra healing, and then since you just bursted, your skill cooldown will get reset and you can cast your skill once again. In no way am I saying this is the optimal way to play her. I'm sure people will find more optimal ways to play her in the coming days, so look out for a pinned comment that will show all the updates if there is any. And then finally, Arlecchino's last 2 passive talents. Strength alone can defend gives Arlecchino 1% all elemental and physical resistance for every 100 attacks she has above 1000, and the maximum res she can get is 20%. So this helps with survivability, which Arlecchino does need because her other passive, while in combat, Arlecchino gains a 40% pyro damage bonus and can only be healed through Bale Moon Rising, which is her elemental burst. So literally any healer cannot heal Arlecchino. Bennett does not work, Kokomi does not work. Of course, this is only in combat. If you're in the overworld and you're not in combat, they can heal her, but when you're in combat, the only way she can heal is her elemental burst. All right, moving on to Arlecchino's best artifact sets. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, they showed this artifact set in the live stream, and this might be the first artifact set 4-piece effect that literally only works with one character. No one else in the game at the current moment can use this artifact set, so this is literally dedicated to Arlecchino. So obviously, it's going to be her best in slot, without a doubt, but Arlecchino does have some other good sets that you can use if you don't have a good Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy set. set. So not too far off would be a 4-piece gladiator set, because you do get the extra 18% attack, as well as getting another 35% damage increase to your normal attack, which is really, really good. You could also use a 4-piece Shimenawa, since most of the time you're not going to be bursting at the beginning of your rotation. You do get the extra 18% attack. You can cast your skill, you'll lose the 15% energy, but you will get an extra 50% damage to your normal attack, and by the time your rotation ends, you'll probably have generated enough energy to be able to burst if you really wanted to. More on this set later, because one of our constellations actually does change this. Of course, if you want to use the Marchesi Hunter set, it gives you the extra normal attack damage and a bunch of free crit rate. So Farina will be the most consistent person to proc this until we get some other character that can possibly drain our HP like she does. If you want to run some 2-pieces in the meantime while you're farming for this set, any mixture of 2-piece attack percent, so like Echoes and Vermilion or Gladiator or Shimenawa, anything that has attack percentage will do just fine. As for some other 4-pieces, it also does depend on how you want to play her. If you want to vaporize or melt, a gilded could be pretty good. You do get some elemental mastery or attack percent, which are both really, really good on Arlecchino. The 4-piece Crimson, of course, is pretty decent. You get the pyro damage bonus as well as some extra vaporize and melt damage. And finally, if you want to run a full mono pyro team, of course, the 4-piece Lava Walker can be pretty good. As for Arlecchino's artifact stats, the sub stats that you want to be going for is the standard crit rate, crit damage, attack percent, and of course, if you want to vaporize or melt, you'll want some elemental mastery. For the main stats, the timepiece will be either attack percent or elemental mastery, depending on what you want to do. Pyro damage, or maybe even attack percent goblet. Attack percent goblet is actually not too far off the pyro damage one, and a crit damage or crit rate circlet. For Arlecchino's best weapons, of course, her best weapon is her signature, the Crimson Moon Semblance. This weapon grants you a bond of life equal to 25% of max HP when you charge attack. That can be done once every 14 seconds. So it's literally just free bond of life, which is really good. You also get a 12% damage bonus when you have a bond of life, and if it's greater than 30% max HP, you also gain an additional 24% damage bonus. There are other 5-star options that are actually really good for Arlecchino besides her signature. Weapons like the Staff of Scarlet that provides a lot of crit rate with a good amount of attack bonus, the Primordial Jade Winged Spear, which also provides some crit rate and attack percent, or even weapons like the Vortex Vanquisher or Calamity Queller. They do give you a lot of attack, which Arlecchino really, really does like, and they have high base attacks, so it's pretty good. The Staff of Homa, of course, is good on her because it's just a major stat stick. And for her 4-star options, the Deathmatch is going to be one of the better ones to use. Get a great amount of crit rate along with some attack percent and defense. Of course, this is a battle pass weapon, so it's not entirely free to play, but it's still very good. Depending on how many leeway characters you have in your party, the Lithic Spear can actually be one of Arlecchino's top 4-star options, giving a ton of attack percent and some crit rate. And if you manage to get the Missive Wind Spear back in 3.1, it can be an okay weapon to use, pretty decent base attack, alongside some attack percent and elemental mastery. Of course, if you bought the Blackcliff Pole from the shop, that could also be okay if it's the best that you have. If you want to vaporize or melt, you might look into some EM weapons. The Ballad of the Fjords, which is the newest battle pass weapon, gives you some crit rate alongside a good amount of elemental mastery. Of course, there has to be at least 3 different elemental types in your party for this to take effect, but most of the time you'll be fine. Unless you're running like triple Hydro with Arlecchino, it's not going to work, but most of the time you could do double Hydro, Arlecchino alongside like Zhongli or Layla, and you're going to meet the requirement of the 3 different elemental types. The Dragon's Bane and the Moon Piercer, the craftable from Sumeru, aren't bad choices, but the Ballad of the Fjords is going to be the better option. Just remember, a lot of these weapons and their strength will change based on your team composition and how you're building Arlecchino and the enemies you're fighting against, so I would do some trial and error and see what weapon best suits your exact team. For constellations, do you need them? Are they worth it? Should you get any? For C1, the Mask of the Red Death that I talked about earlier is now further enhanced by 100%. So this number right here is doubled, which increases her normal attack damage pretty significantly. Additionally, she does get more interruption resistance when she's doing her normal or charge attacks, which is always nice. Her C2 makes all the Blood Debt directives immediately turn into Blood Debt dues. So now you can immediately skill and then charge attack, and you're going to gain a bond of life worth 130% right off the bat. And that's only for one enemy. If you do it on 2, you're going to get the maximum bond of life that you can immediately. Additionally, when she absorbs this Blood Debt due, she unleashes Bale Moon Bloodfire, dealing 900% of her attack as AoE pyro damage, and increasing her all elemental res and physical res by 20% for 15 seconds. You can only do this every 10 seconds, but it's pretty nuts. C3 is actually a pretty good upgrade because instead of it being a burst or skill, it is a normal attack upgrade by 3 talent levels, which is really, really good. Considering Arlecchino is a normal attack DPS, this is really good. C4 allows Arlecchino's burst cooldown to reduce by 2 seconds and restores 15 energy when she absorbs a Blood Debt. So like I said earlier, if you use Shimenawa and you drain your 15 energy in the beginning when you use your skill, you literally can just get it right back by charge attacking and absorbing that Blood Debt. So now Shimenawa's downside isn't even a downside. C5 is a burst upgrade for extra damage and healing. And C6, well, it's kind of cracked. The damage of her burst is increased by Arlecchino's attack attack multiplied by 700% of Arlecchino's current Bond of Life percentage. So the more Bond of Life that you have, the higher damage is going to be. Also, for 20 seconds after Arlecchino uses her elemental skill, both her normal attacks and elemental bursts gain 10% increased crit rate and 70% increased crit damage, which is just an insane upgrade. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to test any of these constellations, but I can only imagine what a C6 Arlecchino would look like. And so my recommendation for constellations is pretty much all or nothing. While some of her constellations are definitely cool, like C2 immediately turning your Blood Debt Directives into Blood Debt Dues, or even C1, which is a pretty huge upgrade to your normal attacks, I don't think any of these are necessary for her to function well as a character to output lots of damage, because she's really good at C0 regardless. Now, if you really love Arlecchino and you want to C6 her regardless, then she's gonna be insane, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun. Moving on to one of the most important sections of the video, Arlecchino's teams. She's actually pretty flexible and can work with a great variety of units. I wouldn't really recommend running her with any Electro, Dendro, and or Geo characters. There are some exceptions, of course, but she does have pretty good synergy with a lot of the cast. Here's one that I really like, just to vaporize Arlecchino: double Hydra with Zhongli for shielding, and Arlecchino to carry the whole goddamn team. Like I said, I wouldn't really recommend this, but if you wanted to do an overload team with Chevreuse and buff your Electro and Pyro units, you could, and it's honestly not that bad. You could also run some melt teams. It really doesn't matter who melts in this team, but you would prefer it to be Arlecchino, but anyone who melts is a good melt, unless it's Bennett. But yeah, melt teams, cryo teams work. You could throw a Ganyu in here if you wanted. You could run Shenhe if you really wanted to instead of Bennett to buff your cryo damage units and to pretty much ensure that Arlecchino is melting most of the time. If you want to run a full carry Arlecchino, which you probably most of the time are going to do, but just full normal attack, nothing else, this is a good team. Like, honestly, Yunjin buffs the normal attack, Zhongli gives you the res shred, Bennett gives you the extra attack, and then Arlecchino just destroys everybody. You could even run a national team with Arlecchino in it, although you might not be vaporizing every hit, or you might have too much pyro, but it's still a very strong team. And if you really wanted to, you could just substitute like Bennett for some more Hydro, just to ensure that you're probably vaporizing with either Xiangling or Arlecchino. So if we throw in like Farina, then you're probably going to be vaporizing every hit. Now, for this whole video, I had Arlecchino at talent level 8 for every single talent, but I want to do a showcase with her triple crown and to show you her actual max potential. She is insane.
Solidify!
Showing you things! Let my name echo! Gotcha! These are about to get dicey.
Stabilize!
Time to shine! Things up! Time's over. Overruled, everlasting as the moon, laid bare.
Solidify!
Strike a pose! Quiet now. Here comes the catch.
I will have order.
Let the world collide! This is where overruled.
Gather! Order guides.
Busted. Time to shine. These are about to get dicey.
Stabilize!
Gotcha.
I will have order.
Game's up. Time's over. Wanted my full attention, did you? Everlasting as the moon.
As always, I appreciate everyone who made it to the end of the video. Arlecchino is insane, and I'm definitely pulling for. Anyways, if you enjoyed the content and want to catch my future videos, a like and a sub is always appreciated. I also do stream on Twitch, so if you want to swing by and hang out or ask me anything, my link is in the description. Anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.